Hello, welcome to Watchwise. So lots of exciting things going on at the moment. We've got a pop-up for Grand Seiko happening with Watches of Switzerland at Regent Street as of the 4th of March through there for 3 weeks, and then going to Oxford Street for 3 weeks, which is really great, and we'll be among some great company and other brands there. During that period, I'll also be flying out to Basel. Maybe I'll see some of you guys out there. So I'll be presenting Grand Seiko product there, and while there I'll try to get some clips of the different watches and do a review once I'm back on UK soil of the Seiko range and the Grand Seiko range that are coming out. So if you're interested in that, make sure that you are subscribed so you hear it from us. We've had some really great events recently as well with Red Bar Club. So anyone that doesn't know of Red Bar, they're basically a group of watch enthusiasts who meet up and go to different events and have a drink and talk watches. We recently went to an event at a.lange on Bond Street, and they had brought over a watchmaker and a movement polisher from Germany, which was very interesting. We also went to the Bremont event, which is like their yearly event in place of not been attending at Basel. So that was hosted at a townhouse. It was very extravagant, lots of fun. They even had a drumming marching band to announce the kickoff to the night, and a live band during the event. Obviously some new watches, lots of drinking, networking, canapes, lots of fun. To the point as to why we're all here today, a friend that I've spoken to recently had told me that they had managed to acquire the SBGA387 from the US while he was there. So this watch is a limited edition piece that is US market exclusive. I hadn't seen it personally myself, physically before, and he was kind enough to lend it to us to do this video, so thank you. I've heard many people refer to it as the Blue Snowflake. I think the nickname people have given it is the Frosty, so I will call it that. But I saw there was a really good video by Urban Gentry done on this particular watch. He clearly done his research, and it was a well thought out video. So rather than just mimicking and doing the same video twice, as people have been comparing it to the Snowflake, that seems like the ideal video to do. So let's look at the differences and similarities between these two watches. So to start, the Frosty is a limited edition piece. It comes in a limited number of 558 pieces, which is exclusive to the US. The Snowflake is a core piece, but it's almost it's almost like the Daytona of Grand Seiko. It's difficult to get your hands on it, and is an international bestseller and highly desired. Moving on to the case with these, the case material for the Frosty is stainless steel, whereas on the Snowflake it is high intensity titanium. The differences there is the high intensity titanium is a unique alloy to Seiko, meaning that it has hypoallergenic properties, it's lighter than steel, and it is more scratch resistant than usual titanium. The steel comes up slightly brighter than the titanium and is more scratch resistant than the high intensity titanium, and obviously more so than normal titanium. The Frosty comes in at 40mm, whereas the Snowflake comes in at 41mm. And the case shapes are different on these. So the Snowflake uses the traditional spring drive case shape, whereas the Frosty uses the 44GS case shape. For anyone that doesn't know what the 44GS is or what that means, basically there is what is called the Grand Seiko style or the grammar of design, and that is basically a group of principles on which Grand Seiko cases should be based upon. And it was the 44GS that was the first watch that really implemented all these different aspects and really set the rules for the forthcoming watches. So this particular case shape is very similar to that particular watch. In terms of the actual fit of these watches, the Frosty, because of those kind of flat, more mirrored lugs, actually appears to sit more tightly on the wrist, whereas the Snowflake design is more curved and makes the actual 41mm case look smaller on the wrist. So although it is a millimeter bigger, I wouldn't say it looks any bigger when it's actually on the wrist, and people are often surprised the size that it comes up. Both the watches have a beautiful mirrored finish, which is due to the Zaratsu finishing, which is done to have a mirrored, distortion-free finish. So the part of the watch we're probably all most excited to look at is the dial. We'll start with the Frosty. So this uses a technique which is called the Kirazuri method. It's like a painting technique used in Japan. It has this kind of beautiful interwoven, kind of almost fabric-looking appeal to it, which is very organic and gives a lot of depth. And with that baby blue or sky blue colouring to it, really catches your imagination as you view it under different lights, and I really hope we can get that across in the video. The Snowflake is inspired by the freshly fallen snow from the Seiko Epson factory. They can see this kind of wind-drifted snow from the watch studio where they make the watches, and that is what has inspired this particular dial. It's extremely stunning to view, and people often refer to it as different things, or it means different things to them, and has a very deep texture, and the more you look at it, the more you get lost into it. Both of these watches have a blue tempered stainless steel second hand, which glides over those beautiful dials in almost like a zen-like fashion, because it never stops. And both of these watches use multifaceted hour markers and minute and hour hands. Now, these multifaceted hour markers, they really play with the light and shadow, which really touches on Japanese culture, because they kind of romantically say that there's kind of beautiful elegance and essence of the shadow, because without light, you don't have shadow. And it's that play of light and shadow that gives these watches beautiful legibility and helps you be able to read the hour hands and the hour markers in any kind of light. Both of the watches have a power reserve on the dial, and you can see from where it's low power reserve to high, and it has the ridges going up, getting larger as it gets to full power. Both of these two watches utilize the spring drive movement. The spring drive movement is a unique and patented movement to Seiko. You can tell these watches are spring drive movement by that second hand that I mentioned earlier, which really beautifully glides across those dials in a zen-like fashion. This gliding of that second hand actually represents the continual flow of time. What I mean by that is that time is both continuous and silent. It's by reflecting these essential characteristics of time itself that spring drive fulfills its promise as the only watch in the world to tell time as nature intended. There's many key benefits to a watch being a spring drive piece. It has a 1 second per day accuracy, or 15 seconds per month. It is essentially a silent movement with that continuous second hand that never stops. It has better shock resistant than mechanical watches. It's a frictionless braking system, so less wear and tear. The accuracy itself is not affected if the watch has lower power reserve, and the power reserve itself is 72 hours. The power comes from human motion and not a battery, similar to a mechanical watch, so no external source such as the battery, either storing or powering the watch. So to move on to the conclusion for these pieces, I'm not going to give you my opinion as to which I think is better. I want to hear what you guys think. Which do you think comes out on top? Do you prefer the Frosty, or are you still in the corner of the Snowflake? I want to see reasons why, and I will make sure to read out a few comments in the next video. On that vein, I will read a few comments quickly for the last video we did, which was the SLA025 video. The first one I want to read was from Repo4, who says, "Oh look, the chapter ring aligns." Burn. Another one, Jordan says, "You look like a supervillain." I mean this is a compliment. It wasn't the look I was going for, but thank you all the same. I'm not sure why. Spud747. I remember this gentleman, actually. I met him. Another watch to add to the wish list. Having watched your review on the new 9F Quartz GMT, I went out and bought one the very next day. Less than a month later, and I'm the proud owner of the Spring Drive GMT as well. You are a bad influence on me, Rob. Was great to meet you at Heathrow Terminal 2 last week. I can't wait to see what GS release at Baselworld. Keep the videos coming. Okay, well, we will do our best, and it was a pleasure to meet you at Terminal 2 in Heathrow as well, funnily enough, which was very random, but it's always great to meet other like-minded individuals and talk watches. Right, so hopefully you've enjoyed this video and this comparison, and you can leave a comment to let us know, and if you would like to see us in the next video, make sure to subscribe.